Growing up in Queens, New York, Marcus and I were as different as siblings could be. He was 3 years older, built like a linebacker, and had this swagger that made everyone think he was destined for greatness. Me? I was the quiet one, the bookworm, the girl who preferred reading naval history to watching football games. Our parents, David and Linda Chen, always seemed to expect more from Marcus. He was their golden boy, the one who'd carry on the family name and maybe even take over Dad's small construction business someday. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. Marcus had always been physical. In high school, he was captain of the wrestling team and had scouts looking at him for college programs. Everyone in our neighborhood knew Marcus Chen. He was the guy who could fix your car, move your furniture, and still have energy to party all weekend. I, on the other hand, was invisible. Sarah the studious one, Sarah the responsible one. Sarah the one who'd probably end up as an accountant or librarian, according to family predictions. Our house on Maple Avenue was small but comfortable. Dad worked construction 6 days a week, coming home with calloused hands and stories about building sites across the city. Mom worked part-time at the local elementary school as a teaching assistant. They were good people, hard-working people, but they had traditional ideas about what their children should become. Marcus would learn the trades, maybe go to community college, definitely stay close to home. I would get good grades, find a nice stable job, marry someone decent, and give them grandchildren. The problem was, I had different plans. It started when I was 14 and found a book about Admiral Grace Hopper at the library. Here was this woman who'd helped develop computer programming languages while serving in the Navy during World War II. She was brilliant, pioneering, and she'd served her country while breaking barriers for women in both technology and the military. I devoured everything I could find about naval history, about women who'd served, about the opportunities available in modern military service. Marcus noticed my new obsession immediately. "What's with all the Navy books, sis? Planning to run away and join the circus?" He'd flip through my library books with this smirk, pointing out pictures of ships and sailors. "You know they don't have room service on destroyers, right?" I tried to explain what fascinated me about naval service. The technology, the global reach, the chance to serve something bigger than yourself, while gaining skills that could translate to incredible civilian careers. Marcus would just shake his head. "Sarah, you get carsick driving to the mall. You think you're going to handle months at sea?" High school only widened the gap between us. Marcus coasted through his classes, more focused on his social life and sports than academics. His grades were mediocre, but everyone still treated him like he was bound for success because he was confident, charming, and physically imposing. Meanwhile, I was maintaining a 4.0 GPA, taking advanced placement courses, and spending my free time researching military academies and ROTC programs. The mockery intensified during my junior year when I started seriously researching Naval Academy admissions requirements. I'd spread my materials across the kitchen table, working on essays and preparing for standardized tests. Marcus would walk by and make comments like, "Still playing sailor, I see," or, "When you wash out of boot camp, don't expect me to come pick you up." Our parents weren't much better. They saw my military interests as a phase, something I'd grow out of once I got to college and discovered more appropriate career paths. Dad would pat my head and say things like, "It's good to have big dreams, sweetheart, but maybe consider something more realistic." Mom worried constantly about the dangers, the travel, the fact that military life might prevent me from settling down and starting a family. But I was determined. I researched every possible path into naval service. The academy was incredibly competitive, requiring congressional nominations and meeting extremely high standards across academics, athletics, and leadership. ROTC scholarship programs were another option, allowing me to attend civilian colleges while preparing for military service. There was also the possibility of enlisting first and working my way up through the ranks, or attending officer candidate school after graduation. Marcus found my determination hilarious. During family dinners, he'd regale everyone with stories about my, quote, military phase. He'd imitate what he thought boot camp would be like. doing exaggerated push-ups in the living room while shouting fake orders. "Drop and give me 20, Chen." "Oh wait, you can't because you've never done a real push-up in your life." The truth was, I wasn't particularly athletic. I wasn't weak, but I wasn't the gym rat that Marcus was. I'd never played organized sports or shown much interest in physical competition. But I was willing to work. I started running every morning before school, following fitness programs I found online. I researched what physical standards I'd need to meet and began training systematically to reach them. Marcus would see me heading out for my morning runs and shake his head. "This is going to last about 2 weeks," he'd tell our parents. "Sarah's not built for military life. She's built for cubicles and sensible shoes." By senior year, I'd narrowed my focus to seeking an ROTC scholarship. The Naval Academy would have been ideal, but the competition was fierce, and I hadn't played varsity sports or held major leadership positions that seemed to give other candidates an edge. The ROTC path would let me attend a good university while preparing for naval service, and if I performed well, I could compete for the same career opportunities as Academy graduates. I applied to several universities with strong NROTC programs, including Virginia Tech, Penn State, and the University of Florida. My grades and test scores were competitive, and I'd started developing leadership experience through volunteer work and part-time jobs. I wrote essays about my interest in naval service, my career goals, and my commitment to serving my country. Marcus thought the whole thing was elaborate make-believe. "You're going to spend 4 years playing dress-up in college, then reality's going to hit when you actually have to report to a real Navy base," he'd say. "Mark my words, you'll find some excuse to back out before you ever set foot on a ship." The scholarship notification came in March of my senior year. I'd been selected for a 4-year Naval ROTC scholarship to Virginia Tech, covering full tuition, fees, and providing monthly stipends for living expenses. In return, I'd commit to 4 years of active duty service as a commissioned officer after graduation. I remember the moment I opened that acceptance letter. My hands were shaking as I read the official language confirming my selection. This was it. This was my ticket to the life I'd been dreaming about for years. I'd proven wrong everyone who thought I wasn't serious, everyone who treated my military interests as a childhood fantasy. I ran downstairs to share the news with my family. Mom and Dad were watching television in the living room, while Marcus sprawled across the couch, scrolling through his phone. I announced my scholarship award, holding up the official letter like a trophy. The reaction wasn't what I'd hoped for. Mom's first response was worry. "Oh, honey, does this mean you have to go to war? What if there's fighting somewhere?" Dad seemed confused about what exactly an ROTC scholarship entailed and whether I could change my mind later. They were both proud of the academic achievement and the financial benefits, but clearly uncomfortable with the military commitment aspect. Marcus was characteristically blunt. "So let me get this straight. You're going to play soldier for 4 years in college, then the real Navy's going to own you for 4 more years after that?" He sat up, looking at me with this expression that mixed amusement with disbelief. "Sarah, you realize once you sign those papers, you can't just quit when it gets hard, right? This isn't like dropping out of the chess club." I tried to explain what the scholarship meant, what my future service would involve, the career opportunities that would follow. But Marcus had already made up his mind about my chances for success. "I give you 6 months, he announced to the room. 6 months of waking up at 5 a.m. for drill practice, 6 months of following orders from some drill instructor who's going to make you cry, and you'll be looking for a way out." He turned back to his phone, dismissing the entire conversation. "Good luck with your sailor fantasy, sis." That summer before college was tense. Marcus had graduated high school but wasn't sure what came next. His wrestling career had peaked in high school, and without the discipline of team sports, he'd started partying more and working less. Dad kept suggesting he learn construction skills or consider community college, but Marcus seemed to think something better would just fall into his lap. Meanwhile, I was preparing for the biggest transition of my life. I researched Virginia Tech's NROTC program, studied naval traditions and customs, and continued my physical training. I bought my first set of military-style workout clothes and started learning the basics of military bearing and appearance standards. Marcus found endless entertainment in my preparations. He'd watch me practice proper posture and walking techniques, then demonstrate exaggerated military marching around the house while humming Anchors Away off-key. Tanhut, Midshipman Chen reporting for fantasy duty. Our parents tried to mediate, but they clearly didn't understand what I was getting into either. They saw it as college with some extra requirements, not as the beginning of a military career that would shape the rest of my life. They supported me in their way, but there was always an underlying assumption that I'd eventually return home and settle into a more conventional life. The night before I left for Virginia Tech, Marcus made one final prediction. We were sitting on the front steps of our house, looking out at the quiet street where we'd grown up. Despite all his teasing, there was something almost wistful about the moment. "You know, I don't think you're going to make it through this, right?" he said quietly. "It's not personal, Sarah. I just think you have no idea what you're signing up for. Military life isn't like the books you read or the movies you watch. It's going to be harder than anything you've ever done." I looked at my brother, this person who'd shared my childhood but seemed to understand nothing about my dreams or determination. "Maybe you're right, Marcus. Maybe I'll wash out. Maybe I'll hate it. Maybe I'll find out I'm not cut out for military service." I stood up, ready to head inside and finish packing. "But at least I'm going to try. At least I'm not just sitting around waiting for life to happen to me." He laughed, but it didn't sound mean-spirited for once. "All right, Navy girl, prove me wrong. I'll be here when you come home with your tail between your legs, ready to say I told you so." Little did either of us know how dramatically our roles would reverse over the next 8 years, or how the cocky older brother would end up watching his little sister drive through military gates while he checked IDs from behind bulletproof glass. Virginia Tech's campus in August felt like stepping into another universe. The sprawling grounds, towering buildings, and masses of students moving with purpose created an energy completely different from Queens. But nothing compared to my first day reporting to the Naval ROTC unit at Holden Hall. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. The brick building housed what would become my second home for the next 4 years. Walking through those doors, I felt the weight of commitment settling on my shoulders. This wasn't theoretical anymore. These weren't library books about naval history. This was the real beginning of my military career. Lieutenant Commander Patricia Williams ran our unit with precision that bordered on artistry. She was everything I'd imagined a naval officer should be: confident, knowledgeable, demanding, but fair. During our first unit meeting, she addressed the incoming scholarship recipients directly. "Some of you think you know what you've signed up for," she said, scanning our nervous faces. "You've read books, watched movies, maybe talked to veterans. But understanding military service intellectually and living it are completely different experiences. Over the next 4 years, we're going to transform you from civilians into naval officers. Some of you will thrive. Others will discover this life isn't for them. Both outcomes are acceptable, but mediocrity is not." My roommate, Jessica Palmer from Colorado, had also received an NROTC scholarship. She was everything I wasn't: outgoing, athletic, naturally confident in social situations. Her father had served in the Air Force, so military culture wasn't foreign to her the way it was to me. Watching her adapt effortlessly to the demands of our program made me realize how much I still had to learn. Physical training began immediately. 3 mornings per week, we gathered at 5:30 for group workouts led by senior midshipmen. These weren't the casual jogs around Queens that I'd been doing. These were structured, competitive, progressively challenging sessions designed to build not just fitness but mental toughness. The first few weeks were brutal. My body wasn't accustomed to the intensity, and I struggled to keep pace with classmates who'd played college sports or came from military families. During one particularly grueling circuit training session, I fell behind badly enough that Midshipman First Class Robert Hayes, our student leader, had to modify my workout to prevent injury. "Chen, you're going to hurt yourself trying to keep up right now," he said, not unkindly. "Drop to modified push-ups, focus on form over speed. You'll build strength gradually, but not if you're injured." I felt humiliated. Here I was, the girl who'd talked so confidently about naval service, struggling with basic fitness requirements that my classmates handled easily. That night I called home for the first time since arriving at college. Mom answered, immediately concerned by the exhaustion in my voice. "Sweetie, are you okay? You sound tired." I found myself on the verge of tears, describing the physical challenges, the demanding schedule, the constant feeling of being behind everyone else. Mom made sympathetic sounds, offering to send care packages and suggesting maybe I was pushing myself too hard. Then Marcus grabbed the phone. "Let me guess," he said with that familiar tone of superiority. Reality's hitting hard, and little sister's discovering that playing soldier isn't as fun as reading about it. "It's not like that," I protested, though part of me wondered if he might be right. "Sarah, there's no shame in admitting you made a mistake. You could probably still transfer to a regular degree program, maybe study business or education, like a normal person. Nobody's gonna judge you for trying something and realizing it wasn't right for you." His words stung because they echoed my own doubts. But something about his certainty that I'd fail sparked defiance. "I'm not quitting, Marcus. I'm just adjusting to a new challenge." "Sure you are," he laughed. "Call me in a month when you're ready to come home." That conversation became a turning point. Instead of discouraging me, Marcus's dismissive attitude rekindled my determination. I started supplementing our unit's physical training with additional workouts at the campus gym. I studied our military science textbooks more thoroughly than required. I volunteered for extra duties and leadership opportunities within our unit. Academic classes presented their own challenges. Virginia Tech's engineering program was rigorous, and balancing demanding coursework with military training required time management skills I'd never needed before. My aerospace engineering major involved complex mathematics, physics, and design principles that stretched my abilities daily. Late nights in the library became routine. While other students socialized or attended parties, I found myself choosing between studying thermodynamics and preparing for our unit's upcoming inspections. Social life took a backseat to academic and military obligations. Jessica adapted more naturally to balancing these competing demands. She maintained high grades while also finding time for campus activities and dating. Watching her navigate college life so smoothly sometimes made me question whether I was overthinking everything or simply less capable than my peers. "You're too hard on yourself," she told me one evening as I stressed over an upcoming leadership evaluation. "Everyone struggles with something here. You've improved dramatically since we started." She was right about the improvement. By October, I could complete our physical training sessions without modifications. My military bearing during inspections earned praise from our instructors. Academic performance remained strong despite the demanding schedule. But progress felt incremental compared to the dramatic transformation I'd envisioned. Movies and books had suggested military training would forge instant confidence and capability. The reality involved gradual, sometimes frustrating development of skills and mindset that wouldn't fully mature for years. Our first major test came during our winter training exercise at Quantico Marine Base. 3 days of field operations, navigation challenges, and leadership scenarios, designed to evaluate our potential as future officers. The prospect terrified and excited me in equal measure. Virginia's winter woods were unforgiving. Cold, muddy conditions made every task more difficult. Our gear felt heavier after hours of movement. Simple navigation became complex when fatigue clouded judgment and weather obscured landmarks. My leadership scenario involved guiding a squad through a tactical problem while under time pressure and simulated enemy contact. Standing in those woods, responsible for making decisions that would affect my teammates' success, I felt the full weight of what officer leadership would eventually require. The exercise didn't go perfectly. My initial plan was overly cautious, wasting valuable time on unnecessary preparations. When our instructor pushed us to accelerate our timeline, I made a navigation error that cost additional minutes. But I adapted, reorganized our approach, and ultimately accomplished the mission objectives. Lieutenant Commander Williams's evaluation was balanced. "Midshipman Chen, your analytical approach shows promise, but you need to develop confidence in your decision-making. Military leadership often requires acting on incomplete information within compressed time frames. Hesitation can be more dangerous than imperfect solutions executed decisively." Her feedback stung initially, but reflection revealed its accuracy. I was overthinking situations where quick, confident action was required. This wasn't about having perfect solutions. It was about making sound decisions rapidly and adjusting course as circumstances evolved. Spring semester brought new challenges and responsibilities. I was selected for our unit's color guard, participating in ceremonies and public events representing our NROTC program. The precision required, the public visibility, and the symbolic importance of these duties added pressure but also pride. Learning to handle the flag during formal ceremonies required practice that went beyond our regular training schedule. Hours of drill practice, perfecting movements that needed to be sharp, synchronized, and flawless during public performance. My first ceremony was at a university basketball game presenting colors before thousands of spectators. Standing at attention in the center of that arena, holding the flag while the national anthem played, I felt a connection to something larger than myself that I'd never experienced before. This wasn't abstract patriotism from textbooks or movies. This was personal investment in serving ideals that transcended individual ambition. Marcus called that weekend, having seen photos on our parents' social media of me in uniform during the ceremony. "Saw your pictures from the basketball game," he said. "Gotta admit, you look pretty official in that uniform." I detected something different in his tone. Not quite respect, but perhaps the beginning of recognition that this wasn't a phase I'd outgrow. "Thanks," I said cautiously, unsure whether this represented genuine acknowledgement or setup for another joke. "Don't get a big head about it," he continued, returning to familiar territory. "Looking the part and being the part are different things. Wait until you're actually responsible for real sailors on a real ship. Then we'll see how tough a Navy girl really is." But something had shifted. His mockery carried less conviction than before, as if my persistence was beginning to challenge his certainty about my eventual failure. Summer brought our first major milestone, a month-long cruise aboard USS Leyte Gulf, a guided missile cruiser home-ported in Norfolk, Virginia. This would be my first extended experience with fleet operations, working alongside active-duty sailors and officers in real naval missions. The anticipation was overwhelming. Everything I'd studied, trained for, and imagined about naval service would finally become tangible reality. But anticipation mixed with anxiety about meeting expectations, fitting in with experienced sailors, and proving myself worthy of the opportunity. The night before reporting to the ship, I called home one last time. "Tomorrow's the big day," Mom said, trying to sound encouraging despite her obvious worry. "Are you ready for this?" "I think so," I replied honestly. "I'm nervous, but it's the good kind of nervous, like I'm finally getting to do what I've been preparing for." Marcus was unusually quiet when he took the phone. After a long pause, he said, "Look, Sarah, I know I've given you a hard time about this Navy thing. Maybe I was wrong about you washing out early. You've stuck with it longer than I expected. Thanks, I think? But this cruise thing, that's when you'll really find out if you're cut out for this life. Living on a ship for weeks, dealing with real military pressure, working with people who've been doing this for years, it's going to be different from college." He was right, of course. Everything up to this point had been preparation. Tomorrow would begin the real test of whether I could thrive in the environment I'd dreamed about for so long. "I know it'll be challenging," I said, "but I'm ready to find out what I'm really capable of." "Well," Marcus said with a slight laugh, "I guess we're all gonna find out together. Try not to fall overboard, Navy girl." As I hung up the phone and prepared for what would be one of the most important months of my life, I couldn't have imagined how dramatically the next few years would reshape not just my career, but the entire dynamic between my brother and me. The girl he'd mocked for getting seasick on ferry rides was about to discover what she was truly made of on the open ocean. USS Leyte Gulf towered above Norfolk's Pier 14 like a floating city of steel and purpose. At 567 feet long and displacing nearly 10,000 tons, the Ticonderoga-class cruiser represented everything I'd imagined about naval power. Standing on the pier that July morning with 20 other midshipmen from various universities, I felt simultaneously insignificant and electrified by the prospect of calling this warship home for the next month. Chief Petty Officer Martinez greeted our group with the no-nonsense efficiency I'd expected from fleet sailors. "Welcome aboard USS Leyte Gulf. For the next 30 days, this ship is your classroom, your workplace, and your home. You're here to learn what it means to be a naval officer by working alongside the best sailors in the world. We'll teach you everything we can, but you need to earn our respect through effort and attitude." The ship buzzed with controlled chaos as final preparations concluded for our departure. Sailors moved with practiced urgency, checking equipment, loading supplies, and conducting pre-underway inspections. Every person seemed to know exactly where they belonged and what needed accomplishing. I felt like an observer watching a complex machine operate at peak efficiency. My assigned mentor was Lieutenant Junior Grade Rebecca Torres, a surface warfare officer 2 years out of the Naval Academy. She'd grown up in San Diego, joined the Navy to see the world, and discovered she loved the technical challenges of operating complex naval systems. "Your job this month is to absorb everything possible about shipboard life," she explained during our initial meeting in the ship's wardroom. "You'll rotate through different departments, stand watches, participate in training exercises, and get hands-on experience with real naval operations. Some days will be exciting, others will be routine, but every moment is valuable learning." Lieutenant Torres had an intensity that reminded me why I'd been drawn to naval service. She was competent, confident, and completely committed to excellence in everything she did. Watching her interact with enlisted sailors, I saw the kind of leader I hoped to become, someone who commanded respect through knowledge and dedication rather than rank alone. Our first week focused on basic ship systems and safety procedures. The complexity was staggering. Propulsion systems, electrical distribution, damage control equipment, weapon systems, navigation tools, communications gear. Every component interconnected in ways that required extensive training to understand fully. Damage control training proved particularly challenging. Learning to fight fires, control flooding, and manage casualties while the ship continued operating required skills I'd never imagined needing. During our first drill, I struggled with the heavy equipment and complex procedures while experienced sailors moved with automatic precision. Petty Officer First Class Johnson, our damage control instructor, pulled me aside afterward. "Ma'am, you're thinking too much about each step, instead of trusting your training. In a real emergency, hesitation kills people. You need to develop muscle memory so your hands know what to do while your brain processes the bigger picture." His advice applied beyond damage control. Throughout that first week, I noticed how fleet sailors operated. They drilled procedures so thoroughly that complex tasks became second nature, freeing their minds to handle unexpected situations and make critical decisions under pressure. Standing my first bridge watch was terrifying and exhilarating. As the junior officer of the watch, I was responsible for monitoring navigation, communications, and overall ship safety, while the officer of the deck handled tactical decisions. The weight of responsibility felt enormous. One mistake could endanger the entire ship and crew. The bridge at night transformed into something magical. Stars stretched endlessly overhead while phosphorescence glowed in our wake. Navigation lights from distant vessels dotted the horizon like moving constellations. Radio chatter provided constant updates on weather, traffic, and operational status. I understood why sailors spoke about the sea calling to them. But romance quickly gave way to practical challenges. The ship's motion during rough weather tested everyone's sea legs. What had seemed like gentle rolling in calm seas became aggressive pitching and rolling that made simple tasks like walking or eating require significant effort. My first encounter with serious seasickness came during a storm off Cape Hatteras. Waves reaching 15 feet sent the ship corkscrewing through swells that had me gripping handholds just to remain upright. The constant motion, combined with diesel fumes and confined spaces, triggered nausea that had me questioning Marcus's predictions about my seaworthiness. Lieutenant Torres found me looking miserable on the main deck, trying to find relief in fresh air. "Feeling a bit green around the gills, Chen?" I nodded weakly, too nauseous to speak. Everyone goes through this. Even sailors who've been at sea for decades occasionally get caught off guard by rough weather. The trick is staying active, keeping food in your stomach, and focusing on tasks instead of the motion. Her matter-of-fact approach helped more than sympathy would have. This wasn't about personal failure. It was about adapting to environmental conditions that challenged everyone. By the second week, I'd found my sea legs and began appreciating the ship's routine. Review at 0600, followed by cleaning stations, morning quarters, and the day's training schedule. Meals in the crew mess, where conversations ranged from technical discussions about equipment to stories about families back home. Evening relaxation in berthing areas, reading, writing letters, or playing cards with shipmates. The camaraderie surprised me. Despite differences in rank, background, and experience, everyone shared a commitment to ship and mission that created bonds I'd never experienced in civilian life. When problems arose, people worked together towards solutions without the petty politics that seemed common in other organizations. My rotation through the Combat Information Center opened entirely new perspectives on naval warfare. The CIC resembled something from science fiction. Banks of computer screens displaying radar contacts, sonar readings, communication frequencies, and weapons system status. Officers and enlisted specialists monitored threats, tracked friendly forces, and coordinated with other ships and aircraft in seamless choreography. Operations Specialist Second Class Patricia Lee became my guide through this electronic maze. Modern naval combat is about information as much as firepower, she explained while showing me radar operation procedures. We track everything within hundreds of miles, analyze threat patterns, and coordinate responses across multiple platforms. The person who sees first and acts fastest usually wins. Watching her work during a training exercise was like observing an artist. Her fingers flew across keyboards and controls, processing multiple information streams simultaneously while maintaining situational awareness that seemed almost supernatural. She could identify aircraft types from radar signatures, predict submarine positions from sonar contacts, and coordinate defensive measures while tracking dozens of friendly and potential threat contacts. "How long did it take you to develop those skills?" I asked during a quiet moment. "Years of constant practice," she replied honestly. "This equipment is incredibly sophisticated, but it's only as good as the people operating it. You need to understand not just how to push buttons, but why you're pushing them, what the information means, and how it fits into the bigger tactical picture." Her expertise represented everything I found exciting about naval service: the combination of cutting-edge technology, professional competence, and strategic thinking required to operate effectively in complex environments. My engineering rotation introduced me to the ship's mechanical heart. The main engines, generators, and auxiliary systems that kept us moving, powered, and habitable required constant monitoring and maintenance by highly trained technicians. The engine rooms were hot, loud, and crowded with equipment that seemed to extend in every direction. Chief Machinist Mate Rodriguez had been maintaining ships for 15 years and could diagnose problems from subtle changes in sound or vibration that I couldn't detect. "These engines are like living creatures," he told me while we inspected the main reduction gears. "They have personalities, moods, ways of telling you when something's not right. You learn to listen to them, feel their rhythm, understand what they need." His relationship with the machinery bordered on mystical. During our watch together, he predicted a bearing failure 2 hours before monitoring equipment detected elevated temperatures. His explanation was simple. The vibration pattern changed. Nothing dramatic, just different enough to know something was developing. The technical complexity was overwhelming. Steam systems, electrical distribution, hydraulic controls, computerized monitoring systems, backup equipment for backup equipment. Every component required specialized knowledge to operate and maintain properly. I began understanding why naval engineers spent years in training before assuming responsibility for ship systems. Weapons training provided the most dramatic introduction to the ship's combat capabilities. The guided missile systems, close-in weapons system, and gun mounts represented firepower that could engage targets hundreds of miles away with precision that seemed almost magical. Fire Controlman First Class Thompson walked me through missile engagement procedures during a training exercise. "Modern naval combat happens at ranges where you never see your target," he explained while we tracked simulated threats on radar displays. "Everything depends on sensors, computers, and communication systems working perfectly together. One weak link in the chain can mean the difference between successful defense and catastrophic failure." The responsibility was sobering. These weren't video games or training simulations. These were real weapon systems capable of destroying aircraft, ships, and missiles with devastating effectiveness. The people operating them carried enormous responsibility for protecting not just their own ship, but potentially entire task forces or coastal areas. During our final week, we participated in a multi-ship training exercise that showcased everything I'd learned about naval operations. USS Light Gulf worked with destroyers, submarines, and aircraft in coordinated scenarios that tested every system and every sailor's competence. My role during the exercise was modest, standing watches, processing information, and supporting more experienced personnel. But witnessing the complexity of modern naval operations up close was breathtaking. Ships separated by hundreds of miles coordinated maneuvers with split-second precision. Aircraft launched from carriers beyond the horizon provided intelligence and strike capabilities. Submarines operated invisibly below the surface, gathering information and positioning for potential attacks. The professionalism and competence displayed by everyone involved reinforced why I'd chosen this path. These weren't people playing games or going through motions. These were dedicated professionals defending national interests with skills, equipment, and commitment that represented the best of military service. On our final evening aboard Leyte Gulf, Lieutenant Torres and I stood on the flight deck watching the sunset paint the ocean in brilliant oranges and purples. The month had passed quickly, filled with more learning and growth than I'd experienced in any comparable period. "So what's the verdict?" she asked. "Still want to be a naval officer, or has reality scared you back to civilian life?" I considered the question seriously. The month had been challenging in ways I hadn't anticipated. The technical complexity, physical demands, and constant responsibility required dedication that went far beyond anything I'd experienced. But it had also been the most rewarding and purposeful month of my life. "More than ever," I replied honestly, "this is exactly what I want to do with my life." She smiled. "Good. Because we need officers who understand what they're getting into. Too many people join the Navy for the wrong reasons or with unrealistic expectations. You've seen what fleet life actually involves, and if you still want it, you'll probably succeed." Returning to Virginia Tech that fall felt strange after the intensity of shipboard life. Campus seemed almost trivial compared to the serious business of naval operations. But I threw myself into my studies with renewed focus, understanding now how classroom theory connected to real-world application. Marcus called within a week of my return, curious about the crew's experience. "So, how was sailor camp? Still think you're cut out for military life?" For the first time, I detected genuine interest rather than mockery in his questions. I described the ship, the training, the people I'd worked with, and the responsibilities I'd shared. He listened without interrupting, asking occasional questions that suggested real curiosity about what naval service involved. "Sounds pretty intense," he admitted when I finished, "more complicated than I figured it would be." "It is," I agreed, "but that's what makes it worthwhile. These people are doing incredibly important work that requires real expertise and commitment." There was a long pause before he spoke again. "You know, Sarah, I'm starting to think maybe I was wrong about you washing out. You sound different talking about this stuff. More confident, I guess." His acknowledgement meant more than I'd expected. For the first time in years, my older brother seemed to respect something I was doing instead of dismissing it as fantasy or phase. But neither of us could have predicted how dramatically our positions would reverse over the next few years, or how the confident midshipman he was finally starting to respect would eventually become the officer whose ID he'd check every morning at the gate. Junior year at Virginia Tech brought new responsibilities and mounting pressure. As upper-class midshipmen, we were expected to lead younger students, while managing increasingly complex academic and military obligations. The aerospace engineering curriculum had reached its most demanding phase, with courses in propulsion systems, aerodynamics, and spacecraft design that required mathematical precision and conceptual thinking that pushed my abilities daily. I was selected as battalion operations officer, responsible for coordinating training activities, managing schedules, and ensuring our unit met all performance standards. The position required skills I'd never developed, motivating people who outranked me in class standing, managing competing priorities under tight deadlines, and representing our unit to university administration and visiting naval officers. My first major challenge came during Parents' Weekend when Admiral Patricia Morrison, a two-star admiral from Naval Education and Training Command, visited our unit for inspection and evaluation. Everything had to be perfect: uniforms, facilities, training demonstrations, and administrative records. One mistake could reflect poorly on our entire program. The week leading up to the inspection was chaotic. Equipment malfunctioned, younger midshipmen struggled with drill procedures, and academic pressures from midterm examinations created stress that affected everyone's performance. I found myself working 18-hour days, coordinating repairs, conducting extra training sessions, and reviewing personnel records for compliance issues. 2 days before the Admiral's arrival, our color guard failed a practice inspection when one of the freshman midshipmen couldn't execute proper rifle movements. The ceremony was supposed to demonstrate our unit's excellence, but repeated mistakes made us look unprofessional and unprepared. I had to make a difficult decision. Replace the struggling freshman with a more experienced midshipman, potentially destroying his confidence and future in the program, or risk embarrassing our entire unit during the Admiral's visit. After consulting with Lieutenant Commander Williams, I chose a third option: intensive one-on-one training that would either bring him up to standard or prove definitively that replacement was necessary. For 2 days, I worked with Midshipman 3rd Class Rodriguez during every free moment. We practiced rifle movements in empty classrooms, reviewed procedures during meals, and ran through the ceremony sequence until muscle memory replaced conscious thought. Other midshipmen helped by providing feedback and encouragement, creating a team effort that transformed potential failure into collective success. Admiral Morrison's inspection went flawlessly. Rodriguez executed every movement with precision that impressed even our most critical instructors. Our unit received commendation for professionalism, attention to detail, and leadership development that exceeded normal standards for college programs. But the real victory was Rodriguez's transformation. He'd discovered confidence and competence he didn't know he possessed, proving that effective leadership could unlock potential that might otherwise remain dormant. The experience taught me that military leadership wasn't about commanding through authority, but about developing people to achieve more than they thought possible. My academic performance remained strong, despite increased military responsibilities. Aerospace engineering required analytical thinking that complemented naval training beautifully. Courses in systems engineering, project management, and technical communication provided skills directly applicable to military operations. Professors noticed my military background and often used naval examples to illustrate engineering principles, creating connections that enhanced both my academic and professional development. Summer training between junior and senior year involved 3 weeks at Surface Warfare Officers School in Newport, Rhode Island. This was preliminary training for the shipboard division officer roles we'd assume after commissioning. The curriculum covered leadership principles, personnel management, administrative responsibilities, and technical systems we'd need to understand as department heads. The intensity was significantly higher than our college ROTC program. Days began at 0500 with physical training, followed by classroom instruction, practical exercises, and evening study periods that often extended past midnight. Instructors were fleet officers with recent shipboard experience who demanded excellence in every aspect of our performance. One exercise particularly challenged my leadership abilities. We were divided into teams responsible for managing simulated shipboard emergencies, while maintaining normal operations. My team faced a flooding scenario complicated by electrical fires and personnel casualties that required immediate decision-making under extreme pressure. The scenario spiraled out of control when I hesitated to prioritize competing demands. While I was analyzing optimal solutions, simulated flooding spread, electrical systems failed, and casualties mounted. The instructor stopped the exercise to address my indecision directly. "Ensign Chen," he said, using the rank we'd hold after commissioning, "perfect solutions that come too late are worthless. Naval officers must make sound decisions quickly, then adapt as circumstances change. Paralysis analysis kills ships and sailors." His critique stung because it echoed feedback from previous evaluations. I was intellectually capable but sometimes struggled with the rapid decision-making that military leadership required. The remainder of our training focused intensively on developing confidence in my judgment and trusting instincts I'd been trained to use. By the final week, my performance had improved dramatically. During a complex navigation exercise, I successfully guided our team through equipment failures and weather complications that defeated several other groups. The key was trusting my training, making decisions based on available information, and adjusting course as new data emerged, rather than waiting for perfect clarity that might never come. Senior year brought the weight of impending commissioning. Everything we'd learned over 4 years would soon be tested in fleet assignments, with real responsibilities for ships, equipment, and most importantly, sailors' lives and careers. The pressure was both exciting and terrifying. I was selected as battalion commander, the highest leadership position available to NROTC midshipmen. The role required overseeing all unit activities, representing our program to university officials and visiting dignitaries, and ensuring every midshipman received training necessary for successful naval careers. The responsibility felt enormous. Decisions I made could affect the career development and military preparation of over 80 future officers. Every training evolution, disciplinary action, and performance evaluation would impact people's lives in ways that extended far beyond college. My leadership philosophy emphasized individual development within team frameworks. I believed every person had potential that could be unlocked through appropriate challenges, support, and opportunities to grow. Some midshipmen needed confidence-building experiences, others required additional technical training, and a few needed attitude adjustments to align personal goals with military values. Marcus called regularly during my senior year, showing genuine interest in my experiences and increasing respect for the challenges I faced. His own path had been less successful. After high school, he'd drifted through various jobs without finding direction or purpose. Construction work, like our father's, didn't appeal to him, college seemed pointless, and his social life revolved around friends who shared his lack of long-term planning. "So you're basically running this whole Navy program now?" he asked during one conversation. "I'm responsible for training and leadership development, but we work as a team with officers and senior midshipmen," I explained. "It's more about coordinating everyone's efforts toward common goals." "That's pretty impressive, Sarah. I mean, you're basically managing people older than you, dealing with official military stuff, representing the university. That's the real responsibility." His acknowledgement felt significant because it came without sarcasm or qualification. For the first time, Marcus seemed to view my naval career as legitimate achievement rather than extended adolescent fantasy. "What about you?" I asked. "Any thoughts about what direction you want your life to take?" There was a long pause. "Honestly, I'm not sure. I've been thinking maybe I should consider some kind of structured career path. Watching you develop all these leadership skills and clear goals makes me realize I've been coasting without any real plan." The conversation marked a turning point in our relationship. Instead of the older brother dispensing wisdom to his naive younger sister, Marcus was asking for advice about career planning and personal development. The dynamic between us had shifted in ways neither of us fully recognized yet. Service selection in February determined our post-commissioning assignments. Based on academic performance, leadership evaluations, and personal preferences, we'd be assigned to surface ships, submarines, aviation, or Marine Corps infantry. My first choice was surface warfare, specifically requesting assignment to destroyers or cruisers that would provide rapid advancement opportunities and diverse operational experience. The notification came during spring break. I'd been selected for surface warfare and assigned to USS Monterey, a Ticonderoga-class cruiser home-ported at Naval Station Norfolk. The assignment was everything I'd hoped for: a frontline combatant with advanced weapon systems, experienced crew, and deployment schedule that would provide global operational experience. More importantly, Norfolk was where I'd conducted my midshipman cruise, aboard Leyte Gulf. Returning there as a commissioned officer felt like completing a circle that had begun with that transformative summer experience 3 years earlier. Commissioning in May was the culmination of 4 years' preparation and a lifetime of dreams. Our ceremony took place in Virginia Tech's basketball arena, with families, friends, and military officials gathering to witness our transition from college students to naval officers. Standing in formation with my classmates, raising my right hand to take the oath of office, I felt the weight of commitment and responsibility settling on my shoulders. The words of the oath, to support and defend the Constitution, to bear true faith and allegiance, to discharge duties faithfully, weren't mere formalities. They represented promises that would shape every aspect of my professional life. My parents attended the ceremony looking proud but anxious about their daughter's entry into military service. Mom worried about deployments, dangers, and the demands of naval life. Dad seemed impressed by the pageantry and tradition, but uncertain about what my career would actually involve. Marcus surprised everyone by driving down from New York for the ceremony. I hadn't expected him to make the trip, given his usual indifference to formal events and military activities. But he was there in the front row, wearing a suit I'd never seen before and looking genuinely proud as I received my commission. After the ceremony, he pulled me aside for a private conversation. "Sarah, I owe you an apology. For years, I've been making jokes about your Navy dreams, telling you it was impossible, expecting you to fail. But watching you up there today, seeing what you've accomplished, I realize I was wrong about everything. You don't need to apologize, Marcus. You were looking out for me in your own way." No, I was being an ass because I couldn't handle my little sister having bigger dreams and more discipline than I did. You've become someone I genuinely admire, and I'm sorry it took me so long to recognize what you were accomplishing. His words meant more than any official recognition or award. Having my brother's respect and acknowledgement felt like validation of everything I'd worked toward. But even as we celebrated my commissioning and discussed my upcoming assignment to Norfolk, neither of us could have predicted how dramatically our lives would intersect again. The newly commissioned Ensign Chen, who was about to report to her first ship assignment, had no idea that 8 years later, she'd be driving through the gates of Naval Station Norfolk as a lieutenant commander, while her older brother checked her military ID from behind bulletproof glass in a security booth. 2 weeks after commissioning, I drove to Norfolk to begin my naval career. The same piers where I'd first stepped aboard Lady Gulf as an uncertain midshipman now hosted my return as a commissioned officer, with real responsibilities and unlimited potential for advancement. USS Monterey awaited, and with it the beginning of a journey that would transform not just my own life, but ultimately the relationship between two siblings whose paths would cross again in ways neither of us could imagine. USS Monterey's quarterdeck gleamed under Norfolk's humid June sun as I approached for my first day as a commissioned naval officer. The same nervous energy that had accompanied my midshipman cruise 3 years earlier returned, but now it carried a different weight. I wasn't a student observer anymore. I was Ensign Sarah Chen, surface warfare officer candidate, about to assume real responsibility for sailors, equipment, and mission accomplishment. The officer of the deck checked my orders with professional efficiency before welcoming me aboard. "Ensign Chen, the executive officer is expecting you in his stateroom. Welcome to Fighting Monterey." Commander Patricia Hendricks had been Monterey's executive officer for 18 months, earning a reputation as a demanding but fair leader who developed junior officers through challenging assignments and honest feedback. Her stateroom displayed awards from previous assignments, family photos, and nautical charts from deployments spanning 3 decades of naval service. "Ensign Chen, your reputation precedes you," she said after reviewing my personnel file. "Outstanding NROTC record, strong academic performance, excellent leadership potential according to your recommending officers. But reputation means nothing until you prove yourself with actual fleet performance." She outlined my initial assignment as electrical officer, responsible for maintaining power distribution systems, emergency generators, and electrical safety throughout the ship. The department included 12 experienced electricians whose technical expertise far exceeded my theoretical knowledge. My challenge would be earning their respect while learning systems complex enough to power a small city. "Your electricians are among the best in the fleet," Commander Hendricks explained. "They've kept this ship operational through deployments, emergencies, and maintenance periods that would challenge much larger crews. They'll teach you everything about electrical systems, but you need to prove you're worthy of their time and trust." Chief Electricians Mate Rodriguez became my immediate supervisor and most valuable mentor. With 22 years of naval service, he'd maintained electrical systems on destroyers, cruisers, and aircraft carriers across the globe. His diagnostic abilities bordered on supernatural. He could identify equipment problems from subtle changes in current flow or voltage regulation that computer monitoring systems hadn't detected. "Ma'am, electrical systems are unforgiving," he told me during our first department tour. "Make a mistake with high voltage equipment and people die." cut corners on maintenance procedures, and fires sink ships. Your job isn't to impress anyone with technical knowledge you don't have yet. Your job is to ensure this department has everything needed to keep Monterey powered and operational. His directness was exactly what I needed. Instead of pretending expertise I hadn't developed, I focused on understanding how electrical systems supported overall ship operations, ensuring proper resource allocation for maintenance requirements, and removing administrative obstacles that prevented my sailors from performing their technical duties effectively. The learning curve was steep. Naval electrical systems involved complexity that dwarfed anything I'd studied in engineering courses. Primary distribution panels, secondary feeders, emergency power sources, battery backup systems, motor controls, lighting circuits, and specialized equipment for weapons, navigation, and communication systems. Every component interconnected in networks that required constant monitoring and preventive maintenance. My first major test came during our preparation for deployment to the Mediterranean. Pre-deployment inspections identified several electrical deficiencies that required immediate correction before Monterey could be certified for overseas operations. Generator control systems needed upgrades, emergency lighting circuits required rewiring, and battery maintenance had fallen behind schedule due to parts shortages. Chief Rodriguez and I developed an aggressive maintenance schedule that would address all deficiencies within our 3-week timeline. The plan required overtime work, coordination with multiple shore-based contractors, and careful prioritization of repairs that couldn't be delayed until our return. Most importantly, it required motivating electricians already working extended hours to push even harder for mission accomplishment. I learned that effective leadership meant removing obstacles rather than micromanaging technical work. When parts deliveries were delayed, I coordinated directly with supply officers to expedite orders and arrange emergency procurement. When contractors needed ship access during restricted hours, I worked with security personnel to establish procedures that maintained operational security while allowing necessary maintenance. When my sailors needed additional training on new equipment, I arranged for factory representatives to provide hands-on instruction. The final pre-deployment inspection passed flawlessly. Every electrical system met or exceeded operational standards, maintenance records demonstrated thorough preventative care, and my electricians had developed confidence in their new division officers' ability to support their technical expertise with effective leadership. Mediterranean deployment lasted 6 months and provided experiences that transformed my understanding of naval operations. We conducted exercises with NATO allies, participated in humanitarian relief operations following earthquake damage in Turkey, and maintained presence patrols that demonstrated American commitment to regional stability. Port visits to Spain, Italy, Greece, and France offered cultural experiences that broadened perspective beyond military responsibilities. Standing watches in Barcelona harbor while Spanish fishing boats returned with dawn catches. Walking ancient streets in Rome that had witnessed naval empires rise and fall. Exploring Greek islands where Allied forces had planned Mediterranean campaigns during World War II. These experiences connected contemporary naval service to maritime traditions spanning millennia. But operational deployments also revealed challenges that peacetime training couldn't replicate. Equipment failures far from home required innovative solutions using limited spare parts and improvised procedures. Personnel problems intensified under deployment stress, requiring leadership skills that went beyond technical competence to include counseling, conflict resolution, and maintaining morale during extended separations from family. My electricians faced a crisis during our 4th month, when electrician's mate 2nd Class Thompson received news that his father had suffered a serious heart attack. Naval regulations allowed emergency leave for family medical situations, but Thompson's absence would leave us critically short-handed during a scheduled exercise with Italian naval forces. Chief Rodriguez and I discussed alternatives, but the decision ultimately belonged to me as division officer. I could deny the leave request, citing operational requirements in short manning, or approve it and find ways to manage with reduced personnel during a challenging training period. The choice seemed obvious from a human perspective, but naval operations don't pause for personal emergencies. Other ships depended on Monterey's electrical systems remaining fully operational during coordinated exercises. Any failure could compromise mission accomplishment and reflect poorly on our entire crew's professional competence. I approved Thompson's emergency leave and worked with Chief Rodriguez to redistribute responsibilities among remaining electricians. We modified watch schedules, postponed non-essential maintenance, and arranged for temporary assistance from other departments during critical evolutions. The exercise proceeded without electrical system failures, and Thompson returned 2 weeks later to news that his father had recovered successfully. The incident taught me that effective leadership often required accepting additional risk to support sailors facing genuine emergencies. Taking care of people wasn't separate from mission accomplishment. It was essential to building teams capable of extraordinary performance when circumstances demanded maximum effort. Our return to Norfolk marked the end of my first deployment and beginning of new responsibilities. I was promoted to lieutenant junior grade and reassigned as operations officer, responsible for coordinating training schedules, watch rotations, and exercise participation for Monterey's entire crew. The position required understanding every department's capabilities and limitations while balancing competing demands for personnel and resources. Marcus called shortly after our return, curious about deployment experiences and increasingly interested in military career opportunities. His own job situation had deteriorated further. He'd been laid off from his latest construction position and was considering enlistment as an alternative to continued uncertainty in civilian employment. "Sarah, I've been thinking about what you said about structured career paths and clear advancement opportunities," he said during one conversation. "Maybe the military could provide direction I haven't found in civilian jobs." I was surprised by his interest but encouraged his consideration of military service. "There are opportunities for people willing to work hard and commit to professional development," I told him. "But you need to understand what you're signing up for. It's not just steady employment, it's a complete lifestyle change that affects every aspect of your life." "I know it wouldn't be easy," he replied. "But watching you develop into this confident leader, seeing the respect you've earned and the interesting work you're doing, makes me think maybe I've been missing something by avoiding structured environments." We discussed various military options: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and different entry paths ranging from enlisted service to officer programs. Marcus was particularly interested in Navy opportunities, partly because my experiences had given him insight into naval culture and career progression. His growing respect for military service represented a complete reversal from the mockery and skepticism he'd shown during my college years. The brother who'd predicted my failure was now seeking advice about following a similar path, recognizing that military careers offered structure, purpose, and advancement opportunities he'd never found in civilian employment. But Marcus was 26 years old with limited college education and no prior military experience. Enlisting would mean starting at the bottom of the hierarchy, taking orders from people younger than himself, and accepting pay significantly lower than his construction wages. Officer programs were possible but would require completing degree requirements while competing against candidates with stronger academic backgrounds. I encouraged him to speak with Navy recruiters and explore options carefully before making commitments. Military service could provide the direction he sought, but success would require dedication to personal development and acceptance of military culture that might challenge his independent nature. My second deployment took us to the Persian Gulf during heightened tensions with Iran. Regional instability created operational demands far more serious than training exercises or diplomatic port visits. We conducted maritime security patrols, escorted commercial shipping through potentially dangerous waters, and maintained readiness for combat operations that fortunately never materialized. The deployment highlighted differences between peacetime Navy service and potential wartime responsibilities. Everything carried additional urgency when genuine threats existed. Training exercises became preparation for possible combat rather than academic requirements. Equipment maintenance took on life-or-death importance when system failures could mean enemy advantages or American casualties. I was promoted to full lieutenant and selected for department head training, marking the transition from junior officer learning basic competencies to senior division officer responsible for major ship systems and large numbers of personnel. The selection was competitive and represented confidence in my potential for continued advancement toward command responsibilities. Department Head School at Naval Surface Warfare Center in Dahlgren, Virginia, provided intensive training in advanced leadership, technical systems management, and operational planning that would prepare me for responsibilities as weapons officer aboard a new construction destroyer. The curriculum covered everything from budget management and personnel evaluation to tactical employment of advanced missile systems and integrated warfare concepts. 6 months of intensive study culminated in assignment to USS James Madison, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer under construction at Bath Iron Works in Maine. As weapons officer, I would be responsible for installing, testing, and operating the most advanced combat systems in the naval inventory. The assignment represented significant confidence in my technical competence and leadership potential. But before reporting to my new ship, I received unexpected news from home. Marcus had enlisted in the Navy and was scheduled to attend boot camp at Great Lakes Naval Training Center in Illinois. His decision surprised everyone, including himself, but reflected genuine commitment to changing his life's direction through military service. "I figured if my little sister could succeed in the Navy, maybe there's hope for her big brother too," he said when he called to share the news. "Besides, you've made military life sound pretty interesting, and I'm tired of jobs that lead nowhere." His enlistment created an unusual family situation. I was a commissioned officer with 5 years of service and selection for increasingly responsible positions, while Marcus would be starting over as the lowest-ranking enlisted sailor in the Navy. Our career paths would proceed on parallel but very different tracks, with me advancing toward command responsibilities while he learned basic seamanship and technical skills. More significantly, there was always the possibility that our paths might cross professionally. Naval assignments were unpredictable, and it was entirely possible that Lieutenant Sarah Chen might someday serve aboard ships where Seaman Marcus Chen was assigned. The prospect was both amusing and concerning. How would we handle sibling dynamics within military hierarchy and chain of command? Marcus departed for boot camp on a cold February morning, looking nervous but determined as he boarded the bus for Great Lakes. The transformation from skeptical older brother to motivated naval recruit seemed almost surreal, but his commitment appeared genuine. Military service might provide the structure and purpose he'd never found in civilian careers. My assignment to USS James Madison proved challenging and rewarding beyond expectations. Weapons systems on modern destroyers represented technological sophistication that required months of intensive training to understand fully. Aegis combat systems, vertical launch missile installations, close-in weapons systems, and gun mounts were integrated through computer networks that could engage multiple targets simultaneously at ranges exceeding 100 miles. Leading the weapons department meant managing 42 highly trained specialists, whose technical expertise covered everything from radar operation to missile maintenance. These sailors represented some of the Navy's most valuable human resources, technicians whose skills translated directly to high-paying civilian careers in defense industries, aerospace companies, and technology firms. Retaining talented personnel required leadership that went beyond issuing orders to include career development, professional recognition, and opportunities for advancement that competed with civilian alternatives. My weapons specialists needed to feel valued, challenged, and confident that their naval service was developing skills and experience that would benefit them throughout their careers. Marcus completed boot camp successfully and was assigned to Electronics Technician A School for technical training in radar and communication systems. His academic performance was strong, and he seemed to thrive in the structured environment that provided clear expectations and advancement opportunities based on merit, rather than personal connections. We communicated regularly during his training period, and I was impressed by his enthusiasm for learning and acceptance of military discipline. The Marcus who'd mocked my naval interests had been replaced by someone genuinely excited about technical training and career prospects. Military service was providing exactly the direction and purpose he'd been seeking. 4 years after commissioning, I was selected for lieutenant commander and assignment as executive officer aboard USS Constitution, a guided missile frigate homeported at Naval Station Mayport in Florida. The promotion and assignment represented significant advancement toward eventual command opportunities, but also marked a turning point in my relationship with Marcus. By now, he'd completed technical training and was serving as electronics technician 3rd class aboard USS Normandy, a cruiser based at Norfolk. His performance evaluations were excellent, and he'd developed a reputation as a reliable, competent technician who could be trusted with complex equipment and challenging assignments. Hidden end duration. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. The sister he'd expected to fail was now a senior officer with command prospects, while the brother who'd been confident in his own superiority was following orders and learning skills that I could have taught him years earlier. But Marcus had found his place in naval service and seemed genuinely satisfied with his career progression. Military structure provided a framework for success that he'd never discovered in civilian employment, and his technical abilities were earning recognition and advancement opportunities. 8 years after commissioning, I received orders that would bring our paths together in an unexpected way. Selected for promotion to lieutenant commander and assignment as executive officer aboard USS Monterey, the same ship where I'd begun my naval career as a newly commissioned ensign. More significantly, Monterey was homeported at Naval Station Norfolk, where electronics technician 1st class Marcus Chen was finishing his shore duty assignment at the base security department. My brother, who'd once mocked my naval aspirations, was now checking identification cards and controlling access to the very base where I'd be serving as a senior officer. The morning I drove through Norfolk's main gate for my new assignment, Marcus was on duty in the security booth. He recognized my vehicle before seeing my new rank insignia, and his expression shifted from routine professionalism to amazement as he processed what was happening. "Good morning, Lieutenant Commander," he said with military precision, but his eyes showed pride, respect, and perhaps wonder at how dramatically our roles had reversed since that night 8 years earlier when he'd predicted my certain failure. "Good morning, Petty Officer Chen," I replied formally, then smiled at my brother who'd finally found his own path to military success. "Permission to enter the base?" "Permission granted, ma'am," he said, saluting smartly as I drove through the gate toward USS Monterey and the next chapter of a career that had exceeded both our expectations. The girl who'd once gotten seasick on ferry rides was returning to command responsibilities aboard one of the Navy's most capable warships, while the brother who'd mocked her dreams was now part of the security force protecting the base where she'd serve. Our journey from Queens to Norfolk had taken paths neither of us could have predicted, but both had led to military careers that provided purpose, structure, and opportunities for service that extended far beyond personal ambition. As I parked outside Monterey's pier and prepared to assume duties as executive officer, I reflected on how military service had transformed not just my own life but the relationship between two siblings who'd started from such different places and expectations. The Navy had made us both into people we'd never imagined we could become, proving that sometimes the most unlikely dreams turn out to be exactly where we were meant to be all along. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.